Hi, this is a course about using UiPath. In this course, we are going to see what's UiPath and robotic process automation. Then we will see how to install UiPath and activate Community Edition. Then we are going to check how our different automation processes are created on UiPath in order to create our first UiPath Hello World project or our first project. And finally, how to integrate SAP with UiPath. Well, UiPath is a robotic process automation. Then you can automate different Windows desktop processes into a robotic automatic process directly, as you could do it manually. As you can see on the left side on the screen, you can see a real process that is done by a person, and it can be totally automated using UiPath. In this case, you are watching how a human person is filling a form, and this form is filling in a human time. It's important to understand that the UiPath is using to execute automatically repetitive tasks in multiple systems faster and errorless than a person. So, as you can see in this video, different systems that takes time, and they are doing on different days of the month. They are important to understand that it's not required complex development or modify actual systems to program these robotics that you are watching in this video. So after doing this automation, process management, then the customer information master system and different systems on the company are used in different times. So different information can be copied from one system and pasted on another one. So all the data that was picked on first system can be pasted on the following. All this information is copied manually in this kind of process, and we can always automate this kind of processes by using an RPA solution. This solution can have access to different systems using UI, so you don't have to program using a complex API or different web services to connect different systems in the background. You can use RPA to use them using the graphical interface as a human being done that. Finally, we can automate that in the very specific way. Finally, we can check that these kind of automations can help employees in its daily tasks, so they can focus its work in more valuable business tasks, and let the bot help them in a continuous and repetitive task. All this system takes 20 minutes for application and 36 fields to complete. And now we are using this with a RPA automation. And now we are doing the same thing on same processes, but using a robot. So as you can see, all these tasks, instead of taking like 20 minutes manually with error possibility, it can be done, as you can see, in few seconds, less than a minute. So and even errorless. So UiPath is can be done all these. So UiPath can be done all these process without errors and repetitive tasks all the time. So in 42 in 45 seconds, a robot have done the same as a human being in 20 minutes. So now we are going to enable a new UiPath Community Edition. After download and install UiPath, you need to activate the Community Edition. So as you can see, I'm going to show you how to do it. On UiPath, you can see the device ID, and this device ID is using to activate it. So if you go to this URL, you can see if you go to this URL, you can see how to continue using or starting using UiPath Community Edition. So you will need to complete all this form, and here you have to put your device ID. Then when you renew your community license, automatically UiPath will be activated and you can use it. So it's that simple as this. We are going to continue now with different automation processes inside UiPath. As you can see, there are three main different automation processes, that is sequence, flowchart, and state machine, and all can be used combined. But first of all, we need to understand why we should use someone, and then why we should use some other one. Let's start with sequence. Sequence has different boxes, as you can see on this chart, that can be used in a sequential order. So if you have, for example, process A and process B, first sequence processes will execute first process A and then process B. You can't go back and again execute process A again, or whatever. It's sequential from the start to the end. Flowchart, as a difference of sequence, can be used as a loop, because as you can see on the picture in the middle, you can use different arrows to connect different processes. So if you have a starting point, then execute process 1, then you can go to the left or to the right depending on the decision created on this flow decision, and even if you want, you can go back and do a loop in this flowchart. A state machine has a difference between flowchart and sequence. Mainly is similar to flowchart, but it can go through different processes depending on the state of the process. For example, this is the first process called init, and then you can go to this process or this process depending on a variable. If the variable is success, then the process go to the one called get transaction data. And if the variable says system error, it goes to end process. So the state machine will understand the states of the process and then go to the following depending on them. Here you can see different processes in sequence. So you can see first is executed and then the following and then the following and like this. So you only go ahead. Here we can see a flowchart with different processes and different ways to understand the flow of the process. So you can use this as an example of a complex workflow process to automate a complex real process. And finally, you can see here a framework that uses state machine. Different processes uses different states to go through different other state machines. So in this case, what you are watching here is a UiPath framework that you can see in advanced lessons. Now we are going to start our first Hello World project. This is the main screen on UiPath Studio. So first of all, we start by adding this sequence that will be our main frame. We are starting with a simple Hello World project that it will be to log in on this website. How we do that? So first of all, on the left side we have an activity panel, and there are all the activities that we can use on our sequence. Remember that we use in this case a sequence type of process. We will start with input dialog like here, and for example in this case we object type user name. In this case input dialog what does is show us a small sign that asks us to enter the username. So the result, the output of this activity, it will be a variable. So in this bottom part, they are variable panel. So we can create a new variable called username. Type variable string, it's okay that I can enter here a string, and a result here will be username. How can we check that? There are another activity called box, message box, that show us some string variables. So if you put username here, this very simple code on UiPath will do this task. First task it will do is to show us some sign that asks us to type the username. But after that, in order to ensure that username entered username is on username variable, the UiPath will show us in a message box that variable on a sign. If you click on run or pressing F5, it will show. So at first type username here. So for example test. If I click on OK, message box appears with test variable. In this case with username variable. So to continue, we will remove this message box, and we are entering a new input dialog with type password. And of course, we will create a password username. That will be the output of this second activity. So, how can we paste this username and password on this website? So, after entering the password, the program, in this case this automation process will type into this variable. In this case, for example, username will be typed, if you indicate on screen, here. So the username we type here, and password will be typed here on password. After that, and by finishing this login Hello World project, we will click on this button, login. So, to wrap up, let me here, excellent, great. So, first of all, input dialog, type username. The username is typed by a person and recorded on a username variable. Second step, type password. The same person type its password and click OK, and its result is recorded on password variable. Third step, the UiPath will type on this part of the web page, the email part, the variable username. And fourth step is doing the same, but with password, on password space, email for username and password for password. Finally, Hello World will click on login. So, if I press F5, our first UiPath project will ask to type a username. So let's click our username, password, test 1 2 3 4. Okay. After that, all that you could see was totally automated, and if you can see, the system was logged in. So our first Hello World project was made, and as you could see, it's even very fast and simple. There are many options, not only that, but it will be some introduction to how to log in into SAP using UiPath. Well, we are going to start integrating UiPath with SAP. First, of course, we are adding sequence activity. Then another one that we will call it initial variables. Why is that? Because instead of creating input dialogues and input every time the bot starts the username and password, we will create a variable called username and another one called password. Finally, we will add to username the value user, and we assign to password the value password. So the initial variables are the ones that we need to start our bot. Then we have our start initial variables. Then we will log in. So as we saw, we can enter here and put user, password, and login. But some cases like this, we will check that type into username. If you can see, the username is inside these initial variables, because I created initial variables, username and password, inside this scope. So if I go here and change the scope to sequence is the rated one, so we can see those variables from here. In this case is username. But as you can see, I can't select this, the username, the user pod. I have to figure out how to log in without selecting the user box. So we know that always SAP is logging, the cursor is here on user box. So it's as simple as that. I will type into directly username and press tab. How can I press tab? By clicking on plus, look for tab, and that's it. It will type the username and then tab, and when you press tab, it goes to password. So another way, I will type into password and finally enter to log in. Excellent. So let's check how it works. Great, as you can see, we are logged into the SAP. So we are entering into a new transaction. As we know, we will add here a new sequence and we name it transaction. So we will type into the transaction will be FF5 and then enter. Of course, always when you press plus sign, you can easily select this kind of keys that you can't write. But in this case, we can indicate on the screen this part of the screen. So when we press this transaction and enter here, we will enter into the transaction. Well, finally, we will test this script that we have our initial variables, login, and then the transaction. Let's play. This was a demonstration on how to integrate UiPath with SAP. Thanks.